Um, Please feel free to run initial map scans and some other things you might want to do for the target. I'm just waiting here for the machine to boot up. This box is officially rated easy, and it is, I believe, rated very hard by the community, and let's see why that is. Just creating a directory for it, and that's the IP address for this box. Alright, got everything. Now we can, as usual, as always, start scanning the target. I will scan the top 20 ports first. The result comes back pretty quickly, since we are only scanning 20 ports. We see only one open ports, 22, and everything else is either closed or filtered. Filtered, I'm assuming closed. It may be, it may not be, but we can dig into that as we go. Now let's do a bit, let's scan a bit more, or a lot more, 100 ports, and see what it gives us. Still only it is reporting the port 22 open. So in this case, we want to do a way more thorough scan, which we are going to scan all ports now with this command. -p scans all the ports, and we'll specify the IP here. Now, I have prepared a little something. So if we were to just wait here, can you hear me right now? There's some noise going on around me, so I turned down my mic volume a bit too much, probably. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. So I was saying how long we would have to wait if we were to just wait for this scan to complete. So we are going to time travel a little bit. And when we do, we will get this result. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time waiting for the scan to complete. So here's something I prepared. If you are following my walkthrough, please make a note of these open ports. We are going to do a more thorough scan and see what each port has and what we can find for each port. It has 17445 and 3455 and 580 open. We'll do a more thorough scan with specifying the ports, and we'll scan for a lot of different stuff with A, and we'll give it the IP address. This shouldn't take too long. as we are scanning only 4 ports. Something came back. Great. Now, this seemingly a lot of information. We can come here and check that it is hosting an HTTP service. So there's this one, and so there's this port. So other than the SSH, all the other ports are hosting some kind of web server. We'll make a quick note of that. I'll keep writing my note here. So we have 17455 HTTP. This one also HTTP and also HTTP. We'll start enumerating from the lowest port. Besides SSH, of course, we don't have anything to go on about SSH at the moment. We don't have a valid list of usernames. We don't have a valid list of maybe passwords that we can use brute forcing with. So we are going to start with HTTP services starting from 17455, which it's 17445. We'll navigate to it. Just confirming my IP here. Okay. We want to specify the port. So, okay, it looks like some kind of people can post messages here, and there are 2 buttons, register and sign in. When we see any buttons, we want to play with them and try to figure out if we can, as presented here. In this case, we want to see if we can, 1, register ourselves, and 2, log in as the registered account, and see if we can perform any privileged actions. Let's try to, well, I'll do test. Seemingly nothing happened. We can confirm if the account was created by going to sign in and using the same account that we created. Seems I am logged in successfully, seeing users, issues, new buttons showed up, and there is the sign up button, which means presumably I am logged in. As usual, when you have discovered some new functionalities, new buttons, new pages, you can go ahead and try playing with them even before, like, we don't necessarily have to actively be attacking the target at the moment. We want to focus on enumeration first, see what target has, what it has configured and whatnot, and what it has to offer. Then we can start planning on our attack paths. Now, this is a list of users. We could, of course, take these two. This is what I created. So we could take these entries, Clinton and Dummy, and supply that as a list of username for Hydra and try to brute force SSH. That would be a way to go, but I usually try to save brute forcing as a last resort. But we will, of course, make a note of that. These 2 users. So in my note, I want to say I could register an account. And log in. And we'll look around a bit more. Probably I can. So it reveals some endpoints. this one says /user/add, and this is issue list. So these are issues. Okay, we can probably delete those or edit those. I'll write that information down. This web app list issues. I'll just make a quick note of that just in case I have to come back to it and do something. Other than that, we can also try to fuzz directories and some other endpoints maybe to see what the web server on this port has. I'll use GoBuster here, and don't forget to specify the port 445. Okay, and we'll give it the word list. I'll use common for this one and see what comes back, and if it is not very conclusive, I might use a bigger word list, but to start with, common is decent enough. It is throwing me an error message saying it is actually telling me what to do for it to work. So it looks like it is complaining. It was trying to see if this directory or file exists, and it got redirected. As a result, the length for this page came back at 0. So it is telling me to continue, exclude the status code or the length. You can take either. You can do you can either exclude the status code or the length. Whenever you run any tool and whenever you face any kind of error message, you want to look into it, read what it says, and try to figure out how you can resolve it. In this case, the tool is telling me there are 2 ways to resolve it. One is excluding the status code, the other one is the length. I will run a help on GoBuster because it has many commands. If you look here, these are available commands for GoBuster, and if you just do GoBuster help, it won't give that specific help command. It won't go through to there, and that's exactly what we want. So you have to, and that it explains it here as well. So we have to dir help. A lot of information comes back. We'll quickly grab on code to get the information we want. It says here status codes, blacklist, string. So it is saying you can also enter ranges, and it has default 444 because when you are fuzzing, a lot of things will come back as 44, not found, and there is no need to report on that. We will supply the status code's blacklist flag with previously set 302. That's what it complained about. So with the same word list, supply the B flag 302 and 404. It seems to run perfectly fine. As we wait for the result to come back, we will, just to save some time, we'll start looking around in other ports as well. Well, this looks weird. Looks like some kind of an e-commerce, not exactly, but looks weird. There is nothing going on. There is no button. No, there is nothing that I can click on. If you see something like this, there are two things you can attempt. You could try looking into the source code of this page, which might give you something. I don't think there is anything. Test ads with URL and title. Really? We can try putting that in and see what happens. Oh, it doesn't exist. Okay, well, coming back to this port quickly, it reported login and register, which we already knew about by looking at the buttons. We'll keep enumerating other ports, and if we still do not have anything conclusive, we can come back to it, and we will come back to it and run a more thorough fuzzing. Sorry, my mind froze a bit there. Try without URL. I can do that. Yep, I can definitely try that. So that did it reflect test 3? Oh, so it accepts a user input for that's. You could start trying to inject cross-site scripting payloads here and whatnot. That's definitely a thing, and see what more it can do for you, which I might later. Let's see what comes back from. I'll run a GoBuster command with the basically the everything same, including the B flag, and run it and see what it comes back with. In the meantime, I can most certainly so it is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. That's pretty funny. Okay, this is going to spam because this got reflected on here and all the other titles. So I'll just navigate to this page again. Their search is fine. Just anything. You are free to use whatever tool you use, definitely, as long as the tools, you know how to use it, you know how to get it to get the job done. It's perfectly fine. Always use whatever tool of your choice, whether it's a note-taking app. Just choose one. Experience a variety of different tools and see what you like and stick to it. That would be my advice. Our fuzzing came back and it has index.php, which I assume this one. Yep, that is our index, and there is PHP info. We'll update our node here. Vulnerable to cross-site scripting. And there is this, I don't know what's going on with that. Let's navigate to it and see what it is. Okay. That's probably, it is forbidden. So we are as of now, we have no means to use that. So we'll just move on from it, but we'll make a note of it. when I'm writing my notes, I like to specify the word list I used to fuzz the target because otherwise I might forget what I used. I come back to it later and I use the same word list. That would be a bit of a waste of time. We'll quickly write that down. PHP info, there might be something we need from here. We can make note of the PHP version. It reveals really a lot of information. We will come back to it if necessary later. We can also see what engine is in use here, along with a lot of different configuration. But for now, we'll move on to our next port because there is one more yet. The last HTTP service running on the web server as far as we know. Ooh, pizza. There seemingly is something a lot more going on this port. Before I get all distracted by all the delicious ingredients and menus items, we'll, as usual, as we have, run directory busting here with the same word list. 580. Pretty much immediately, a lot more things are coming back. So there is index.html and oh, it's all on one page. It is so sharp and any string. It is directing us to a specific heading. So here about that's what it is doing. It has the same directory /4, whatever that means. It might be pointing to the same location as 3455, or maybe not. We don't know yet. Because on this port, there are seemingly a lot more things going on. So we will try running any sort of directory busting with a more bigger word list. We might just get lucky. And if that doesn't pan out, of course, we'll go back to the other ports and start enumerating further. It's just one of those things, intuitions like, oh, I think there's a lot more going on. So I'm going to start with a bigger word list on this port first. And you're free to just, when you are enumerating, you are free to go on about it in any order you'd like, as long as you can take good notes and be thorough. Here I will actually increase my thread because otherwise it'll take longer than necessary. So something we didn't see before came back here. It says cloud. That could be interesting. I'll write that down here. Also, there is CGI bin, but it is forbidden. We'll quickly navigate to it to check what it has. So we are in that directory. We have been redirected to index.php/login. It says next cloud here, so we know that's what's in use. There is one thing that my favorite thing to do, which is when I see any kind of login page, it is it has always been my choice to go with admin. If that doesn't work, start Googling whatever it is you found, default credential. Start putting those in. And if that doesn't work, you can move on and try some other vectors. But it takes a very, very small amount of time. Just quickly admin and see what happens. Looking at the URL, I can already kind of tell, yep, it worked, great. Usually what I found is if it's taking somewhat of a longer time, that is probably letting me in, I usually think. It's not always 100% going to be correct, but it's just what I think. It has some random images that looks like a bird. There is also another bird. And we find issue tracker. It's a zip file. We can download it and unzip it and see what it has inside. If I can download it. I don't know what this means. Oh, there we go. Okay. Whenever you face any web application that is using another language that you're not familiar with, you don't need to panic. You can run like a translator, or I sometimes had to do that when I was working as a penetration tester. Sometimes I got web tests. They sometimes would have some languages I'm not familiar with, but it's web app, so web app. It's going to have CRUD operations and similar functionalities. All web apps are different, but my point is no need to panic just because it's in a different language. Because now that we've downloaded that, we will move that in our directory here, unzip it. A lot of files came out of it. We can tell that it is written in Java here. So to effectively see kind of everything, I like to use a tree command. It shows all the directories, all the files. It reports to you how many directories, how many files in the current directory you are in if you just run tree. Now there are so many, well, actually not that many. When you are dealing with a Java web app, and if it has controllers, controllers are what has the mapping information. So we'll just quickly grab on controllers. Controller. And I will run it with an I flag that makes it case insensitive. So you can see my C was small caps and it still grabbed this one. This sounds vaguely familiar for this reason. Oh, the title says issue tracker, so that is what it is. Okay, that's a good way to confirm. Do pay attention to the title. It might just tell you something useful, and or we can take advantage of. This matches with the zip file here, issue tracker. So we know this zip file has all the source code and whatnot for this web application on 17.4.4.5. Sometimes this can happen. You grab some information from one, even though they are both, or we have 3 HTTP services here. You grab some information on one port, then you might be able to use it for some other services on other ports. Don't assume that they are all like separated just because they are being hosted on different ports. Now that we have controllers here, I'll try to get the full path of those files, and I'll start with the first one, issue controller first. I can look at here and confirm for the full path. Source, main Java, com issue, and issues, okay. Was it Java? Yeah. So we see the content of the controller, issue controller here. The community ratings, if you hover your mouse cursor over the name of it, it tells you here. It says on the top left corner, top right corner, sorry, very hard as rated by community. Coming back to our source code. This is a lot of information, but I'll actually make my terminal larger and read it out with line numbers. You can do that with an N flag that gives you line numbers so that I can just quickly, oh, this line 66 or whatever. Now, this is a lot of information, but we want to pay attention to mappings first. Get mapping here so we can delete issues, edit issues, usual CRUD operations. This one has check by priority. So request param, that is a parameter. So if we give it check by priority, question mark, priority equals whatever, then it'll take it. Let's see what it uses that for. It is also revealing some kind of, this must be the database credential, connection props, and it is supplying users this one. We could try this on SSH as well to see if this password is being used by for password reuse, if this password is used by multiple different accounts. We should write that down here. So we found the issue tracker.zip. Reveals a DB credential. Okay. And we can absolutely, so with the usernames that, yeah, here, Clinton and this, then might work. Oh yeah, that might work. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Okay, we could also, of course, try dummy here, see what happens. Okay, fine. It takes only a small amount of time to check, but if that's the way to go, that is, you can open a path to the target. So it is worth checking. Always keep credentials in mind. Try to think where you can use obtained credentials. Now, coming back to the web app, since our login attempts failed, you can see an SQL query here. This is the database connection on line 69. This is the DB string. It is connecting to the database issue tracker. And on the next line, line 70, we see a database query. This query is vulnerable to SQL injection. How can I tell? Well, there is something called a parameterized query. That is, it has something to do with it's a function in SQL DBs that prevents SQL injection, and that usually involves some kind of question marks in syntax. And because it is taking a value here, it is directly inserting it into the query. This is vulnerable to SQL injection. I'm going to copy this entire thing and show how this can be, or how to exploit this kind of query. So we have this line. This is including, here we have all the Java syntax and everything. Usually how I go on about SQL injection is, if you have a query, which you don't always, but if you do, try breaking it down into small enough chunks that you feel comfortable working with. And that is exactly what I am going to do. I'm going to chop off, so to speak, all the Java syntax, because string query equals, that all comes from the Java side. So I'm going to get rid of that and copy only about this part. Now, this double quote belongs to still the syntax. It is appending at the end with plus, and it is adding this single quote here, and it's ending the query. So we don't need these double quotes, and the plus signs also belong to the Java syntax. So we are going to get rid of them. And this is what we have. This is what is being executed by the database. And this is whatever we give it. So here, get mapping. We will actually navigate to it and see what happens. At the moment, our assumption is that priority, yeah. It will accept whatever we give it. But it comes back with, okay, do not panic, read the error message, as always. There was an unexpected error. Method not allowed, status 405. If you're curious about what that means, you can Google it and find out. I'm going to just quickly summarize. What that means is your method was not allowed. Well, that's what it says. What that means is the HTTP method, which was get, if you put in anything in the URL bar, send it off as is, then you're making a get request, and it is saying get not allowed. So we will change the method, and we can do that on Burp Suite. And I have noticed very recently, you can see mine disabled here. Foxy Proxy got updated, and it does not like working with Burp Suite as far as I'm aware. Somebody might have found a way to work with it. I haven't. And I didn't have to, because I went ahead and set up a built-in proxy setting on Firefox. You can configure that with, wait, where did it? Firefox has a built-in proxy support, so you can look it up and set it up so that you can still work with Burp Suite. I'll have the intercept off and see if the traffic is coming through. I haven't set that up. Okay. Well, in that case, I will go ahead and so I had to disable that to use my own. So you can set it up this way. You're doing essentially the same thing. Foxy Proxy just makes it easier and faster. With that setup, the traffic should be coming through. There it is. I'm going to take it to the repeater. You can hit on anywhere in the request tab, and I'm going to send it to the repeater with Control R, or you can right click on it and do it that way as well. It didn't come through. There it is. Okay. So when we send a GET request to it, it says method not allowed. Okay, well then, oops. How about post? It comes back with 200, which means the request was successful. Seemingly nothing is happening. We see if you go through the response, and if you are curious about how that looks, you can right click on your request and there is an option to send the session on your browser, request in browser and in original session or in current browser session. Now, coming back to the SQL statement here. So this is whatever we put in here. We now just did ADSF, then the query will be like this. That's what's happening on the back end. So we will try and see how we can take advantage of this and turn it into a further we will try to open up a further access to the target using this vulnerability. Now, there are single quotes, so we want to close that. For example, if I go something like this, I am telling it to, I'm trying to put it to sleep by 5 seconds here. And this won't work because there is a trailing single quote here, and that will be a syntax violation. We want to tell it to finish the statement here by supplying this manually within the SQL query, and we want to comment out whatever that is following. You can do it here, but when it involves spaces and whatnot, it doesn't like it. You have to URL encode it, and I'm going to use a feature, Burp Suite feature, and put it in here. Then it encodes whatever you're putting in nicely, so I don't have to worry about it. Let's do a single quote, space, union, select, sleep, 5, and a semicolon, and space, 2 hyphens, and space. And we'll see if that puts it to sleep. Setting the Foxy proxy to default and setting it up again fixes? Huh, okay. That is good for everyone to know. as soon as I saw others mentioning it, I thought, I'll just use the built-in proxy function in Firefox because I know that works. So now you can check how long it took for the web app to get back to you, the response. So here it says a little more than 5 seconds, which means this was successful. If you want further confirmation or something, you can do like 30 seconds and see if that takes around 30 seconds, which I think it will. So we'll go ahead with 10 and wait a bit more. I mentioned briefly, so when you suspect an SQL injection on a web app, if you have the source code or the underlying SQL query of any of the sort, this is how you can go on about it. In case you don't, you want to hypothesize the underlying query and start going from there. Then enumerate column numbers and enumerate the database version, whatever, to see if you can open up further access to the target. Now, I changed it to 10 and it approximately took 10 seconds, which means our attempt worked. Now that we have control over a database query, there are so many ways to go on about it from here. The approach I will take is similar to kind of file upload and executing it, not literally, but one of the SQL queries. So this syntax is for MySQL, and that's how I know to use my MySQL payloads. There is a MySQL command to write a file, and with that you can of course write some malicious payloads onto the target system and have it executed to get a reverse shell. Here, let's try. So this is our injection point. I'll write that down here as well. Select sleep. So I will node like this. So instead of sleep, what we are going to do is test into out file, and you can specify a path here. I will try to write into the web root directory default and test.txt and see if that ends up anywhere I can access. The request succeeded, seemingly. Let's see if I can access it anywhere. Not here. Not here. Not here either. So the query probably succeeded, but we are not seeing, it's not found anywhere. Now, if you remember, on port 3455, it had PHP info. And what's useful about this is it tells us web root, at least for the one being hosted on 3455. I'll search the keyword for root to find, there it is, server document root, and it is srv http. It is always about using the information we already have to gain further access. We'll use that path. Srv http. Yes. we'll try to write into that directory. We may not have enough privileges or permission to do so, but we'll try it and see what happens. That's my preferred way of doing things. So we wrote a file into this directory successfully. We can write a file on the system and we can access it. And we already know this is hosting PHP, which means we can upload a PHP web shell or a PHP reverse shell, have it executed, and gain access that way. Now that we know this works, all we have to do is just putting our reverse shell or web shell payload there and have it executed. I'll go with a common PHP web shell payload here. This is a PHP function execute. It executes a system command, and in PHP, this is defining a parameter, and this can be whatever you name it. I'll name it CMD. And I want to end this statement with a semicolon. Oh, so this should go to the content, of course, and that is the file name, and I will name it webshell.php. So union select, then there is our content into out file, and we have to specify the path here, which is srv http, and I'll name it webshell.php. Nothing is showing up because we have not really told it anything to do yet. So as I said, we defined the get parameter, so CMD will do ID. So the target is running it as root, which is never really recommended. You want to define a user, put it some usually www data. That's why when you have a shell through a web app, usually you end up as www data. Now that we have a web shell, it means we have remote command execution. So through the web shell, we will try to turn it into a reverse shell. Yeah, I noticed that. Thank you for pointing that out. So we can write our commands here. Comes back nicely. Okay. We'll try it's my favorite way of going on about this, just trying the very, very fast, easy to check, simple bash reverse shell command. We'll actually use is that the right? Nope. revshells.com. Okay, I was off by one character. We'll supply our IP address here, port. Let's try with 80 first. So it gives us a bash reverse shell payload. We want to set up the listener and run this command. It's taking some time. Hopefully that goes through. fully. So in case it doesn't work, which it should usually pop up kind of immediately if it doesn't, there are many, there could be many reasons why your payload fails. One thing I usually suspect is the target restricting the outgoing traffic to certain ports. And there are two that I always test. It's 80 and 80 and 443, HTTP and HTTPS by default. It says not found even though this, well, clearly exists. We'll try 443 and what happens. Always, if you try to go to one way, it's blocked, try other ways. Ah, look at that. So that pops immediately. So my suspicion was correct. It was restricting outgoing traffic to port 80. There is an extension for that. That's neat. The chat mentioned there is apparently an extension that has a lot of reversal payloads and tricks and whatnot. That's interesting. Okay. So now we have a shell. If you've been following, you can go ahead and grab the flag for it. And as we ran ID before, this web app is running as a root, so no privilege escalation is required for this box. And I don't know why it's saying 404, even though the page clearly exists. If you are curious about it, you can look it up and try to find reasons for it. And before I go, we have a promotion going on at the moment. Learn One is on sale for 20%, I believe. I'll put the link, yeah, in the Twitch chat here. That is, we have an ongoing promotion, and Learn One is on sale for 20%. I purchased it last year, and my current access for that is ending. But I found it a good deal. It comes with a lot of different access, like 100 level content and whatever. I shall catch our flag boxes like this. You just get from web shell. It sometimes is the case for boxes. Some boxes it is, some boxes it isn't, but I think most of the time it isn't. Always remember to remember information you have. If you don't, try to write them down and come back to them and see them. Try to come up with ways you can use them to gain further access. Thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you can use it for maybe one of the boxes in the Capture the Flag competition, because that's coming up in a couple hours. I'm not sure if there is a way to filter it by community ratings. I would personally rate this machine like medium. That concludes today's box walkthrough. Thank you so much everyone for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.